Donald Trump is in Scotland right now, and he did yet another disastrous interview, this time with Nigel Farage, who is a fellow right-winger, so a lot of the interview was a softball interview. But we'll start off with a rare moment where Nigel poses a correctly framed question to Trump, sort of. Here's this.
My point to you is, if you're going to win this next year, in November 2024, you're not going to win it talking about what happened last time.
But Nigel, you brought it up.
Haven't you got to sell a positive message?
100%. You brought this up to me. I didn't bring it up to you.
No, sure.
You know, you mentioned something. I said, look, it was rigged. And I say that. I'll always say that. It doesn't mean
we know
that out of a 1 hour speech, I'm going to devote half of it to this. I might devote 10 seconds to it.
Okay.
But the election was rigged. It was a rigged election. It was a very dishonest election. And
my point.
So we have much more to look at from this. But first, to respond to that moment, of course, Trump is obsessed with his election lie about the 2020 election. And hopefully, if he loses in 2024, it will be in part because of a rejection to his big lie. But I said Nigel framed the question correctly. He did and he didn't. Because it's true in a sense to say you can't win in 2024 screaming about 2020. Yes. As I said before, it's a strange strategy to run an election saying, elect me now because, hey, I lost that last election and really wish that I didn't. But it's also an incorrect framing of that question, because if an election was actually stolen, of course you would talk about that constantly, and that would be the top issue in the next election. How do we prevent something like that in the future from happening? The importance of why Trump shouldn't talk about the 2020 election is entirely and completely because he's lying about the 2020 election. The reason why he shouldn't be able to win in 2024, saying he won in 2020, is because he's lying. He didn't. And he's attempting to break down our democracy with those lies. And that is the important part that should be pointed out. Next moment here.
The election was rigged, and Rupert Murdoch should have talked about it.
But Rupert Murdoch doesn't believe he can win a court case on that.
But Rupert Murdoch's wrong. And whoever settled this case for that much money, and I think it was an insult not only to Fox, it was an insult to all the people that work there. It was an insult to everybody that knows what happened during that election. Number one, they didn't use the legislatures. Number two, if you just look into modern times, just look over the last couple of months. The FBI dealt with Twitter. They call it Twitter files. That was cheating. Look at the 51 different.
I have no doubt about
look
that.
at the 51 different intelligence agents, so-called intelligence agents. They all lied. 100%. They lied. All of this stuff is cheating. And then you look at Truth to Vote, where hundreds of thousands of ballots were stuffed in the ballot boxes. They were stuffed. And it's on camera.
But if you can't prove it in a court of law.
Well, you can prove it there. The judges never got a chance to look at it. And the judges, frankly, they're very disappointing because they were afraid to do anything.
Okay. So all things we've heard before. I don't know why Nigel Farage is agreeing with Trump on those claims. Obviously, like I said, he's a right-winger. But if Nigel thinks those claims can be proven in a court of law, which he said, or at least he said Rupert thinks that they can't, and he seemed to agree with that, then he should recognize it's because there aren't facts to go along with the claims. In so many of these interviews, Trump is just reduced to a rambling conspiracy theorist that you'd listen to on the subway or something, and the host takes him seriously. Trump, you had a chance way back when to prove your claims in court. You failed. You paid researchers to find proof of your claims, and they couldn't. And no, the FBI, led by your appointee, didn't steal the election. I hate to say it. I don't hate to say it. I love to say it. And if Rupert Murdoch had instructed, as Trump wants him to do so bad, or wanted him to do so bad, Fox lawyers to go into the Dominion defamation trial and just lie about the election, Fox News would have been paying a whole lot more than $787.5 million. For sure. Next moment.
Trying to destroy you, aren't they? I mean, I saw that photograph of you, and I've met you before when you were going through tough times as president, when they just kept on you. And frankly, I don't know anybody that could have withstood it, but you did. You kept going right through.
And we had a great presidency. Look, I got the biggest tax tax credits. Take a look at what we did in terms of tax cuts. We got the biggest tax cuts in history, biggest regulation cuts in history, rebuilt the military, created Space Force. We did things that nobody thought were possible to do. Had the strongest border we've ever had. Now we have the worst border probably in the history of the world. There's no country in the world that has a border like we have.
Yeah, 6 million.
Drugs were way down. People coming in illegally were at the lowest point we've ever had. We did a great job as president, and people want that back. Now,
Okay, so let's go through some of that. As another reminder to our YouTube segment viewers, I'm sick, voices all out of whack because of that. And sorry to our podcast listeners and full show viewers who have to keep hearing this, but because the show gets broken up into multiple stories to be uploaded to YouTube, I need to repeat so everyone knows why I sound like a teenage boy going through puberty. But to go through what he just said, his tax cuts disproportionately benefit the wealthy and continue to exacerbate income inequality. His deregulation may have contributed to the train derailments that Republicans blamed Democrats for and the bank collapses. The border is something we discussed more in depth earlier in today's show, but no, he didn't have undocumented immigration to its lowest rates ever. No, his border policy wasn't massively different than Biden's, which, as I mentioned earlier in today's show, many progressives are mad at Biden for that. No, we don't have the worst border in the history of the world. There are problems, absolutely, but the solution to those problems are not what Trump is putting forward. If you are a YouTube segment viewer and you go find the Lindsey Graham border segment on the channel, I dive into the proper solution more in depth. And finally, he mentioned drugs at the border. Fentanyl being the thing they talk about the most. We saw fentanyl coming across the southern border start shooting up at the end of his presidency, and then it carried over, yes, and continued to increase under Biden. So you can hardly say you would solve the drug problem. But last clip we'll look at here.
There's a growing, I sense in America, unhappiness about the money that's been given to Ukraine.
Yeah.
Why does nobody talk about peace and peace negotiations?
so if I were president, and I say this, I will end that war in one day. It'll take 24 hours. I know Zelensky well. I know Putin well. I would get that ended in a period of 24
You can break that deal.
100%. It would be easy.
So Trump has repeated that 1 billion times, it seems. We talked about it even earlier in today's show and got into more in depth during the Steve Bannon interview with Trump, why that's obviously absurd. And it is absurd, as shown by the fact that he can't provide any specifics as to how that would actually take place, how he would end it in 24 hours. But I want to focus in on, and I'll get this pulled up for us one more time, the Nigel Farage question that he posed there. So just listen to this again.
There's a growing, I sense in America, unhappiness about the money that's been given to Ukraine.
Yeah.
Why does nobody talk about peace and peace negotiations?
So
Everyone who is supportive of aid to Ukraine, among voters, I can't speak for the leaders and their intentions, but among voters, wants peace. We would love peace. But guess what? Putin doesn't want peace. And so you can kind of hear echoing around his question a lot of the certain part of the right wing, MAGA, Tucker Carlson, right wing, a lot of the talking points we've heard from them. We would love peace, but Putin doesn't want it. Do you know how I know that Putin doesn't want it? Because he keeps invading. The invasion could end tomorrow if Putin ended the invasion tomorrow. If he has a serious plan that he wants to put forward for peace, then put it forward. But until then, we aren't going to just leave Ukraine to be attacked without support in the form of aid. And right now, any peace agreement that would be acceptable to Putin would just be handing over massive parts of Ukraine to Russia, which is that the rule we want to have set? If you invade a country and kill enough children, you can just take whatever part of that country's territory you like. That would be a disastrous rule to go by. Supporting Ukraine is the way to peace because it's the most likely option for getting Russia to eventually stop invading. make sure you're following me on Instagram, Luke Beasley Official. Thank you so much for watching. If you want to be a part of what makes this show possible, plus get access to the full video version of the show hours before all the clips are able to be uploaded to the YouTube channel, plus get the extra bonus show on the weekends, and maybe if we get enough support, I can go get this illness checked out and figure out what's going on with my voice. You can do so by going to lukebeasleyshow.com/membership. That's lukebeasleyshow.com/membership.